Alright, hello everybody. This has been a requested video for a while now. Several people have asked what my bike is, what's done to it, and to just kind of walk through the build. So this is my 2019 Kawasaki ZX-6R or 636. It's a super sport build. I actually just got back this past September from Circuit of the Americas in Austin, where I qualified for the Moto America Super Sport Grid, which was a ton of fun. Unfortunately, it was the one and only time this bike has been down, which is why you see all this road rash here. Speaking of that low side, here are my leathers I was wearing during that time. This is another one of my sponsors, Comet Leathers. These things held up really well. Didn't feel a thing. I wear the Tech Air 5 Alpine Star vest. Just got that one back in. I actually have two of them. That one they both had to get recharged, but yeah, leathers held up really well. But let's jump right into it. I'll try and drop in some either racing footage from Coda and or dig up some build videos and photos that I have when I went through the bike, building it up just a couple years ago.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video there and we'll go through some of the Coda pictures I have first, and then we'll go through the build series. So first up, just kind of your iconic photo from Circuit of the Americas with the Texas flag in the back. It's my hometown. This was race 1. Feeling really good before I fell. Some heavy braking and qualifying before the last turn. Super awesome shot. These are all Brian J. Nelson, by the way, photography. Awesome getting on the starting line with these freaking really fast guys. Here's race 2. I can tell because of my rash on the side of my bike. And I believe this is race 1. Here's the start. I'm in the middle right of the screen. You see my elbows up from motocross. A little bit of wheelie action. Super awesome experience. Some of my friends and family cheering me on. Very fun. Alright, getting into the build video. So this is when I built the bike back in September, October, November, December, January of 2021. So started off as a completely stock bike. Took it to my house, started tearing her down. We already knew there was an engine problem. It had thrown a rod, so we had to get the engine replaced. So here's me taking the engine out. Never done this before, but this whole series was a big learning experience for me and kind of elevated my level of self-care and maintenance of the bike, which was really helpful. Engine out. Getting down to a bare chassis. Here's the new engine I purchased. I was able to find the same model year with just 1,700 miles on it, so that was nice. All the compression checked out. New K-Tech came in. Here are the front cartridges. The rear shock. These are the DDS line of suspension from K-Tech. Then we started tearing the motor down. Ryan Snooks from Ready to Ride, based in Jacksonville, North Carolina, did the motor work for me. Super awesome dude, shout out to him. Got the intake runners cleaned up a little bit and the motor all lubed up and put back together, ready to go. This is me, pretty much like Christmas, going through all the new parts, just anxiously waiting to get them on the bike. Some of it secondhand, a lot of it new. I think I'll mention later in the video, Vortex is one of my sponsors, so I got pretty much their whole catalog on my bike. Got the pipe there. Then we started putting stuff on. So here's the clip-ons, buttons. Already dropped the forks so they could get ready. Rain light, lightweight battery. Got the cartridges all put in from Ryan as well. He did that work. Got them slotted in on the bike. Was able to get the motor back in. Just kind of running through, got some steel braided brake lines on, the rear sets. Front wheel speed sensor. Had to get a different line for the quick shifter there. Got the rear shock in. And this bike was pretty much brand new. You'll see later in the video when I'm testing out the electronics, getting the bike turned on. SBS pads, captive spacers. Got the engine covers on, started getting some of the coolant lines ran. Got the tune in, the ECU back from Vortex Racing. Rear sprocket. things are starting to come together. And this was just me working on this, you know, most every other day, coming home from work when I had time. Driven block off plates, got the pipe mounted up. All the coolant lines ran, radiator on. Got the tank mounted up, the seat on. Almost time for the first fire up, which I don't think I recorded. Felt like it was a bad omen. Got the rectifier relocated for the body work. And here you go. This bike had 150 miles on it, so it was like working on a new bike, which was awesome. Super stoked to hear it fire up for the first time. I came from an 05 Honda, if you saw in the first video of me taking the motor out, so hearing this thing, it was just a beast to me. After we bled the system, we got some real revs out of her. And then my bodywork came in, and shout out to Monterey, one of the homies from RTR, painted this stuff up while I was gone on deployment overseas. So super awesome to come home to almost a complete bike. Got the windscreen on, and then got the dripping wet graphics on once they came in. She's ready to rip, or so we thought. So here's Wera at Road Atlanta, my first attempt at racing the bike. This is just practice. Turns out we had a transmission problem. It didn't want to stay in third gear. So we went through, I pulled the clutch assembly, and then I ended up pulling the cassette transmission out. It was just a third gear issue. No visible damage, but put the original transmission in and we were set to go. So that was kind of the last issue of the bike, and she's been rock solid ever since. So this is actually my first time out on the bike. You can see with no graphics. Before we figured out the transmission issues, we felt something going on, or I did. We just weren't able to kind of get it figured out before Road Atlanta, unfortunately, but still had a really fun time. Got my session cut short, having some problems with the bike, but thought we fixed it. Didn't end up fixing it, but this is out at NC Bike in Garysburg, North Carolina, before I moved to the West Coast. But anyway, back to the original video in my garage going through the bike. You'll see pretty much all the same parts, some new stuff, but basically me just describing why I have them on my bike and why racers in general may want them on their bike.
So starting at the front, I have a Powers Racing windscreen on here. There's my tech sticker from Coda. Other than that, the fairings themselves are from Hot Bodies. I've been told, at least, they're not the greatest fairings, but they've held up pretty well for me. Obviously some road rash and whatnot from my low side, pretty high speed low side at Coda, but was able to kind of bandage them back up, and they are working just fine for me. K-Tech internals on the front forks, full cartridges with the caps on top as well. Really like the K-Tech suspension. They really transform the bike once it's set up properly and gives you a lot more adjustability in terms of what track you're going to. Stainless steel braided brake lines from Core Moto, just to help with brake fade and give you a better feel on the brakes. It's a race bike, so everything is safety wired, of course. Do this little safety wire with a piece of tubing and C-clips on there, or little clips on there, just so you don't have to completely redo it every time. You just unclip it, which is really nice. More safety wiring on this side just for the axle. Nothing special there. Just made our own little screen here for the radiator to protect against tar and rocks and whatnot. Obviously you can see some of it gets stuck in there, but full Yoshimura exhaust system front to back. No catalytic converter. All right, so for the cockpit, one of my sponsors is Vortex Racing, so you'll see pretty much everything I could get Vortex on the bike is on the bike. So I have their titanium levers here. I like the full-length leathers. I don't really deal with all of the shorty stuff. Not really a huge fan of those. But these held up really well. In my low side, obviously, you see the clip on there got shaved off a little bit. Wasn't enough for me to replace it, even though I have spares. And then the lever didn't bend, break, or anything like that. Just got some scarring on it, so that was pretty awesome to see. Vortex clip-ons, some domino grips. We safety wire these just so they don't move around. I've been known to have kind of a death grip on the bike, so I usually safety wire my stuff just to make sure they don't move around on me. Got an aim solo hardwired up so that I don't have to worry about charging it, battery and whatnot. I'm actually running woodcraft buttons just to kind of take away the stock plastic ones that tend to break a little easier if you have a wreck. And then the Vortex brake lever guard, which is required for racing, just to make sure no one's accidentally bumping your front brake in case you are rubbing elbows with anybody. And then the same brake lever on there from Vortex. So if I power the bike up here, you'll see the aim pop on as well. At the end of the video, I'll start the bike up and give you guys some revs. Just a very basic steering dampener just to help with when the front end gets light under power. You don't want it wiggling around on you, just makes the bike a little bit more stable. Vortex keyless gas cap, nice and easy, you don't need keys or anything like that. Same thing with the ignition delete key delete. You don't need ignition, you just turn the bike on and then it'll fire. Moving back, got RNG tank protectors on the sides here. Easy grips. Just for gripping with your leathers to make sure during turns and whatnot it's nice and easy to grip the bike. I run the stock seat. The hot bodies fairings, unlike armor bodies or other companies that have kind of the seat cowl that comes with it or the seat tray, I just run the stock seat. So I have this little lever here that releases the stock mechanism. So if we unlatch that, I have a lightweight battery here, not the heavy lead acid one. You can see the power commander, DynoJet power commander nestled in there, and then I have the terminal to hook up for a trickle charge if I need it. K-Tech suspension in the rear as well, fully adjustable Vortex rear sets. So you can see from my low side, I ground down the foot peg quite a bit here. Again, wasn't enough for me to put a spare on. I just ran it how it was. Factory quick shifter, so just the quick shifter, no auto blip on this bike. GB Racing engine covers. Protected my stator cover on this side pretty well. And then some silicone hoses, just a little bit tougher than the stock rubber stuff. Again, more safety wire just to wire any of the coolant lines there, the oil filter here. Full Vortex gearing, front and rear sprockets, and their 520 conversion chain. Works really well. Got 90-degree valve stems on both wheels. I actually have my spare wheel set as well. Same exact setup, captive spacers, lightweight rear rotor. On this side, I have my rain light. So the rain light in the back is required for Moto America in the event of a wet weather race. You have to be able to turn that on. And I use it with this button here. So if we turn the bike on, this will actually indicate if the light is on or off. So that's on, obviously, and then off. And so if we look back here, click it on, click it off. Pretty simple. Yoshimura pipe again. Here's the wiring setup, safety wire setup for the rear axle. Just makes getting your tire changes a lot easier. You can just pull this pin out, take your axle out, and it clips on for the rear caliper as well. Steel braided brake line again. I have this little delete for the rear brake reservoir. Clips and just unnecessary stuff on the bike. Safety wired the oil filler cap, GB Racing engine covers on this side, the silicone hoses. At the Motion Pro coolant reservoir tank right there. And aside from that, that is, I believe that's about it for the bike itself. It's a pretty simple setup. It works for me. It's an extremely fun bike. I've loved racing it over the past year or two when I am able to race. This is just a hobby for me, so not my full-time job by any means, but I only have transponder mounted here. When I do sell the bike, it won't come with my solo timer or the transponder, but everything else is included. Extra wheel set and then my spares. So I have like a little table cover and a bike cover, Kawasaki. And then all the spares I have, spare gearing, brand new Vortex sprockets, all of the stock OEM forks, rear shock, extra handlebars, oil filter, brake pads, chains, body pieces, side fairing, front cowl, extra windscreen, extra front cowl, the stock brake lines, got a stock rear set over here, all kinds of stuff. And then some different sprung K-Tech front springs and rear spring as well to change out. And you can take as many of my crazy amount of tear-offs I have from this past season and just saving tires. A lot of them are barely used. But
so what I'm about to show is the OEM motor that came with the bike. It's a complete motor. It'll also come with the bike for whoever buys it, but it's got 150 miles on it. It does have that thrown rod, so it needs some bottom end work, but the head, transmission, minus the third gear being recut, and the clutch are all good.
This motor actually only had about 150 miles on it. The bike was essentially brand new when the previous owner had a crash on it and messed the engine up, but only 150 miles on all that stuff. This motor, that was the donor motor, had about 1,500 miles on it when I got it, and I've put another almost 1,000-ish miles on it. So the chassis itself only has 1,094 miles on it total. The bike runs like new. It's like working on a new bike too, which is really nice. Everything is still very easy to work on and nice and clean. And I will put in here, the reason I am selling this bike is, well, one, I am married, so there are rules in the house. My wife was nice enough to let me buy my dream bike a while ago. This is my 23 R1. Love this thing. But if I'm getting a new race bike for a different class, the other one has to go. So here's my parts bin of stuff I've been acquiring for the next build. If you have a keen eye, you might be able to tell what it is, but I will definitely have a build video over that bike when I get one, because I don't even have the bike yet. Gotta sell this one first. This video is probably chopped up into some different bits I recorded at different times, but I think some people may want to know why certain parts are put on that may not be as involved in either the racing aspect or just getting involved in bikes. So first off are clip-ons. So clip-ons basically are just the handlebars for the motorcycle. The stock clip-ons that come on the bike are typically a lot more narrow and a little bit less adjustable. So aftermarket clip-ons let us usually elongate the handlebar a little bit, put more things on here or space out items a little bit more appropriately. It also gets us a better riding position, so our hands are, they can be to our liking. Essentially, it's just an adjustable feature that widens the bike out a little bit more and makes it easier when we're going through corners. For rear sets typically on, crotch rocket sport bikes, your typical motorcycles meant for the track are typically okay. But most of the time you do want them up a little bit higher, or again, you just want adjustability. The stock ones are fixed, like you see on my R1 over here. These guys are fixed and I'm not able to move that foot peg anywhere. Whereas here, with my Vortex clip-ons, I have all of these different holes for adjustments. I can move these two bolts and put them higher, lower, front to back, basically wherever I would like them. It also helps with ground clearance on certain bikes that may drag the factory foot pegs. These are also fully modular, so this foot peg can be replaced, this plate, the rear brake lever, things like that. For the case protection, obviously I have GB Racing on both my bikes, but if you end up, putting your bike down the road, you don't want the ground to burn a hole in your clutch or stator cover on either side, and then you start spilling oil everywhere, or you just have some type of malfunction. So these keep it safe. Obviously from my low side at Coda, that would have definitely ended my entire weekend and not just my race one. So this was perfectly fine. I was able to remount and go for race 2. For suspension, on a typical motorcycle, again, my pretty much stock R1, there's only a limited amount of adjustability you're able to do on the rear shock and the front forks as well. These are actually pretty good, but for typical stock bikes, you want a lot more adjustability for compression, rebound, the damping, spring rates. You can put different springs in there. It just allows you a lot more adjustability in terms of suspension to dial it in for either whatever track you are at, whatever you're feeling on the bike. and your weight, of course, as a rider. Windscreen. So I've got Pugue, however, I don't even know how you say it. Windscreens on both my bikes right now. But the stock screens, basically it's a lower profile typically on a stock windscreen. So a higher profile windscreen just allows you to get a little bit more tucked and into the bubble, into the airstream, so you're a little bit more aerodynamic on the bike with your helmet. Obviously, race fairings, you'll see on every race bike, just because, you know, like my R1, when I was disassembling it, putting some upgrades on it, you know, just this front portion is made up of like 8 different pieces. Whereas on my race bike, this whole front cowling is one big piece that comes off together. So ease of maintenance, ease of replacing parts. It's also made of different material that tends to be, it's like a fiberglass composite most commonly. So they tend to be a little bit more sturdy and withstand more of when you crash. So you can see here, you know, there's some cracks and scrapes and all that, of course, but like right here you can see. But it doesn't actually disintegrate or come off in pieces normally. And they're repairable. You can repair them with, you know, fiberglass repair kit or whatnot. If I were to crash my R1, crash my fingers, those are, you know, more of a plastic composite that would just kind of shatter. Obviously the keyless stuff, you don't want to key for your gas cap or your bike itself. That's just one less thing to worry about when you're at the track. You don't want to have to take your key around and make sure you have it every time you go to the track, or worry about it when you're restarting your bike after a crash or whatnot. So those are kind of just a quick overview of some of the basics of, you know, basic track day upgrades that you want for normal track day goers and definitely for racers. There's a few more parts, but those are the main ones. I think most people say clip-ons, rear sets, and then maybe an exhaust and a tune, and you should be good to go for, you know, track day activities. If you want to go racing, there's a little bit more to it than that. But essentially that's what I've done to my R1. Save the rear sets. I just haven't given those a go. I'm honestly pretty comfortable with the stock rear sets that are on this bike. But I did put Vortex clip-ons on my R1. And then I do have a Yoshimura system for the exhaust, and I put a tune on it. So top speed is unlimited. It's got a more aggressive tune. All the emissions stuff and the catalytic converters off the bike, so it's a lot lighter and just a simpler system, and a lot more comfortable as far as the ergonomics go for me in the cockpit, as well as a Pugue Racing windscreen. I'll go ahead and do an overview of kind of the controls and features of the bike that come stock on it. So Kawasaki has different power modes, as well as traction control and the quick shifter. So those are the 3 options you see here: power, Kawasaki traction control, and Kawasaki quick shifter. So using the dials over here, you can cycle through tripometers and your odometer. If you press the middle enter button, it'll flash to what power mode you want. So you can put it to low power, which kind of limits the throttle response, and a couple other things. Honestly, I'm not sure, but I always leave it on full power. And then traction control, I believe, is 1 through 3 or off. So you can turn it off, 1, 2, or 3. And that is basically, I believe it retards the timing of the bike, and essentially using the wheel speed sensors, it'll sense if you're slipping coming out of corners, just like in a car, to help you keep the power on the ground and not spinning up your wheels. So depending on the track, the technicality of the track, I'll set that to either usually 1 or 2. I typically don't run with it off. I kind of like at least at 1, just as a safety net essentially. And then the quick shifter, I believe if you press and hold and then let go, you can turn the quick shifter on or off. There we go. I always keep that on, of course. So that's just full throttle shifting, clutchless upshifts. Gives you a little bit better time advantage when you're going through the upshifts, and it's a lot easier than having to work the clutch. Or drop the throttle, rather. I usually leave the coolant temperature on there, so that's another thing you can change. The range of your fuel, coolant temperature, intake air temperature, miles per gallon, and your average miles per gallon. I leave that at the coolant temperature just to make sure the bike's not overheating or anything like that. I can keep an eye on the temperatures, especially at Circuit of the Americas. There were unfortunately a lot of mechanicals and casualties of teams in bikes overheating, either waiting on the starting grid too long or just overheating in the race in general and blowing motors. So that was one thing we were keeping a close eye on. And then of course you have your gear indicator. We're in neutral. Clock, definitely not right time right now. And then it's nice that this bike does have a fuel gauge, and then just a visual oil temperature reader as well. It's a cold start. Now that she's warmed up, I'll give you all some real revs.
Alright, this has been a long video. Thanks if you've made it this far, but lastly, we'll wrap up with what is this bike like to ride. So here's a couple laps spun around Thunderhill Raceway on the west side, one of my local tracks with Pacific Track Time in A group.
Anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. But that is my bike build. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks.